and welcome to When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast, a podcast born out of my own personal experience of burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma as a caregiving professional. This podcast showcases both lived experience guests and also guests who are in the field of burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma, including myself from Burnout Psychology Support. It's all about sharing the wisdom that we have, whether it's the lived experience guests or it's the expert guests, sharing our wisdom so that you, the listener, can gain that wealth so you can either help yourself or be able to help others who are going through this. Just a word of caution as well. Everything that is shared in these episodes are for educational purposes only. They are certainly not a replacement for evidence-based therapy support. It's something that myself, I still engage with it, but certainly when I was in the thick of my burnout, engaged with, and a lot of my other guests. So I really encourage you to do so. So thank you so much for listening. And don't forget, if you like an episode, hit like. I love hearing from you, so comment away or definitely subscribe or follow so you stay up to date with episode releases. But thank you so much for being here and take care of you. Bye for now. Welcome to this month's solo episode. If you are in your 40s or 50s, you might have found yourself feeling stretched thin, emotionally drained, questioning your purpose or direction, and wondering if it's burnout or something else. Maybe it's a midlife crisis, or maybe it's both. Today, we're diving into the overlap between burnout and midlife crisis. Two powerful forces, or I think so, that can reshape how we see ourselves and our lives. So if you've ever felt exhausted, questioning your direction, or caught between the stresses of daily life and the bigger existential questions, this episode's for you. Let's explore how these experiences, burnout and midlife crises, intertwine, and more importantly, how you can navigate them with clarity and self-compassion. I'd like to start by answering this first question. How do we know we are experiencing a midlife crisis or burnout? Both midlife crises and burnout can feel really similar because they often share similar characteristics like dissatisfaction, exhaustion, and even questioning life choices. But they do stem from different sources and show up in some distinct ways. When we talk about a midlife crisis, it usually is more emotional and existential in nature. You start questioning your identity and purpose, wondering whether you're living the life you really want. You might notice that people going through midlife crises tend to make sudden changes, like leaving jobs, starting new relationships or leaving them, or picking up new hobbies, all in the pursuit of redefining themselves and their life. The focus is often on what is missing or what hasn't been gained or achieved yet, which creates this feeling of urgency to change. On the other hand, burnout is more about prolonged physical, emotional exhaustion. It often stems from our work, but also caregiving or the overwhelm from the huge responsibilities we carry in life. So burnout builds gradually, often due to pushing through this stress for too long without recovery, without a break. So when you're burnt out, the key symptoms are feeling depleted, unmotivated, and detached from things you used to enjoy. Unlike a midlife crisis, where there's a desire for big life changes, burnout often leaves us too exhausted to even think about change. So to sum it up, midlife crisis is about big life questions and changing direction. Burnout is about energy depletion and feeling stuck in that cycle of stress. So if you're feeling more physical exhaustion, lack of enthusiasm, or overwhelmed by the responsibilities you carry at work and at home, it's likely burnout. But if you're questioning your identity or life path, and feeling restless, it might lean more toward a midlife crisis. The next question I want to explore with you is, can midlife crisis and burnout happen at the same time? Yes, it can. And I can tell you that with certainty, as it did for me. Both involve significant life stresses, just from different angles. And here's how they overlap. Burnout usually stems from external stresses like work, caregiving responsibilities, or the sheer load of everyday responsibilities that we carry that are unrelenting. A midlife crisis, though, is more internal. It's a reckoning with life choices, purposes, direction. And in midlife, these often come together. And let's think about this. Many people in midlife are balancing a ton of responsibilities, whether it's a demanding job where they might be acting in a senior position, caring for aging parents, raising children or teenagers, or even managing financial and health pressures. And all of these can lead to burnout. And at the same time, midlife is a natural period of reflection where we do start asking, or some of us do, am I where I want to be in life? And that can spark a midlife crisis. One can also feed into the other. For example, burnout can lead to a crisis when you hit a point of exhaustion, and in that exhaustion, start questioning why you're doing what you're doing. The fatigue makes you wonder, is this really the life I want? And in turn, this can trigger a crisis of purpose and identity. That was the way for me. Conversely, a midlife crisis can lead to burnout. If you're grappling with big questions about life, and you become and feel overwhelmed by that desire for major changes, it can be emotionally draining, and it can be difficult to make those changes. The pressure to find a new purpose while still dealing with the daily stresses can increase that risk of burnout. And when both happen at the same time, it might feel like being stuck in life, crisis, midlife, but too exhausted to change, burnout, questioning life choices, that midlife crisis, but feeling emotionally drained, burnout, wanting to pursue new goals, midlife crisis, even correction, which we'll talk about soon, but lacking that energy to do so, burnout. The next question I'd like to explore with you is, how can we navigate both the midlife crises and burnout? Navigating both the midlife crisis and burnout can feel like being pulled in many directions. And so it's key to take it step by step so you don't get overwhelmed. So the first step is often addressing burnout, because burnout is about a full mind, body, soul exhaustion. So we need to re-energize. We need to rest, regain that energy to find clarity, to explore these deeper questions that the midlife crisis brings up. So it might sound obvious, rest and recovery, but it's usually the hardest part if burnout has been going on for some time. There's a lot of behavioral patterns and systemic environmental issues to address. And it's things like maybe needing to start to set boundaries at work and in personal life to protect your energy, reducing responsibilities where possible, and giving ourselves permission to fulfill our needs. So small energizing activities can be great to start with, because often burnout robs us of the capacity for joy. So starting with small things that fill your emotional tank. It could be as simple as reconnecting with nature. And this is something that I did engage in a lot in the first stages of recovery. Spending time with loved ones, or picking up an old hobby without any pressure to achieve anything. It also can look like seeking support, having someone who's a professional who can guide you through burnout recovery can make a world of difference. Whether that's in therapy, which I did, coaching, or burnout recovery groups, support does lighten the load. Step two is slow down decision making. If you're dealing with midlife crisis at the same time, you might feel that urge to make some big life changes, quitting your job, changing careers, moving somewhere new, or even completely shifting your focus. However, during burnout recovery, try to pause before making those decisions. As you start recovering from burnout, you'll have more emotional and physical energy. And using this time to self reflect, connecting back into your mind, particularly your body, and often through journaling or mindfulness, this can be really helpful to do that, to get a clearer picture of what you truly want, what really matters to you, rather than making a quick decision. So, with that mindful exploration, instead of jumping into those major life changes, taking those small steps to explore different possibilities, researching new paths, or experimenting with small changes to see how they feel before diving fully in. So, step 3, explore deeper questions. Once you have the energy, once you feel your inner ways in your burnout recovery, you can start to address those deeper questions that come along with the midlife crisis point. And here I encourage reframing midlife as growth, as a course correction. It doesn't have to be about panic and anxiety and stress. Shift that mindset and embrace it as a time for growth, rejuvenation, reinvention. What would you like that next chapter to look like? And instead of feeling pressured to change everything, which you'll feel that, focus on discovering more about yourself. Look at purpose and meaning. Reflect on what truly brings you fulfillment. It might be helpful to revisit past experiences or align your current actions with values that mattered most to you now. Hey there, listeners. Just taking a quick moment to share something special we are gearing up to launch in 2025. Thrive Beyond Burnout, a membership designed specifically for midlife women ready to reclaim their well-being and lead a more balanced, fulfilling life. As a midlife woman who experienced my own big burnout in my early 40s, I know this journey firsthand. Now in my mid-40s, I've found a more balanced, fulfilling way to live, and I'm here to support you in finding your path. In Thrive Beyond Burnout, you'll have access to weekly practices for growth, monthly masterclasses and QA sessions facilitated by me, someone with over 2 decades in mental health and a lived experience of burnout. You'll also have an ever-growing library of resources, and you'll join a private network of like-minded midlife women where you can connect, share experiences, and find encouragement every step of the way. Right now, we are running a pilot phase with our founding members to gather valuable insights, and we're excited to officially open the doors in 2025. So if this sounds like something you've been looking for, I invite you to join our waitlist. Just head over to www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com/thrive-beyond-burnout and fill out the form that you'll find at the bottom. By joining this waitlist, you will be the first to know when we launch. So are you ready to thrive? We look forward to welcoming you to the Thrive Beyond Burnout in the new year. Step 4, set realistic, compassionate goals. During this transition, be kind to yourself. Set goals that are realistic and compassionate and aligned with what is meaningful and important to you. Be gentle with yourself. Remember, it's okay to move slowly. Avoid comparing yourself to others and focus on small, meaningful steps. And celebrate the small wins, or celebrate wins no matter what they look like. Whether it's feeling less exhausted or gaining clarity on a decision, acknowledging that progress, every step counts. And step 5, building a supportive network. Going through both burnout and a midlife crisis can feel isolating. Build a support network that truly understands your journey. So connect with others. This could be through a trusted therapist, a close friend, maybe who's going through something similar, or a community like the one that I've started called Thriving Beyond Burnout, a membership for midlife women. But there's so many out there. Find that tribe. Shared wisdom and encouragement remind you that you're not alone. And step 6, create space for long-term changes once you've addressed burnout and gained that clarity. It's time to envision long-term changes that align with those values and that energy. And finding sustainable changes rather than making quick fixes, think about what changes will last. Whether it's scaling back on work commitments or shifting your focus to meaningful projects, making sure these changes support both that burnout recovery and prevention and that personal growth with that midlife correction, reinvention. Navigating both burnout and a midlife crisis might feel like juggling multiple challenges, and it is. But with that rest, reflection, and a compassionate approach, you can move through these experiences and come out stronger with a renewed sense of purpose and energy. I want to take a moment just to share my lived experience of juggling both a midlife crisis and burnout at the same time. And as I alluded to earlier, mine started with the burnout, but it became apparent to me through a good friend of mine, Gary, who just in conversation when I was off work and on my path to burnout recovery, he said to me, "Oh, Shan, do you think you're going through a midlife crisis?" And I totally poo-pooed the idea because I went, nah, like I'm not having an affair. I haven't bought a red Ferrari or any of the things that my mind had conceptualized a crisis to be. So I did not take any notice of what he said. However, it did stick with me, which is always interesting. If something sticks with me, there's something about it. And it wasn't until I was working as a teacher during my recovery, when I did go back to work, and I was doing some teaching and counseling, that I came across in this book about human development and the different stages. I came across midlife crisis and correction, as they called it as well. And I was reading these theorists, thoughts and research in the area. And I was like, oh my God, yes, this is part of what's happening to me. I am experiencing midlife correction, course correction, and rediscovering or discovering what is it that I really, the direction I want to go, the purpose and meaning. So yeah, Gary was right, which in our relationship, it's always a bit tough for me to admit that he's right. It's hard for me to admit that anyone's right. I particularly find that a little bit tricky. It's especially with people that that are in my circle. So yeah, he was correct. And so a big part of my journey of recovery, and certainly I did follow the steps, not that I was actually mindful of it at the time, but I focused on the burnout first because my energy was completely depleted. So I didn't work for about 3 or 4 months, just did those small things, reconnected back to nature, the joys, went to therapy, dealt with lots of the issues, behavioral patterns and trauma and stuff that contributed to my burnout, and then started to tackle those bigger questions down the track. They were always there and I was processing them somewhat, but I didn't, there was a sense of urgency sometimes because I was 40, I was 41 at the time. I was like, oh my God, half my life is over. I've got to know where I'm bloody well going, so there was that urgency, but something I was learning and trying and putting into place was pacing and not rushing, because that was a behavioral pattern that got me into burnout. So I was using that with that midlife correction and reinvention, as well as just taking it slow and discovering myself, reconnecting back to myself, because with the burnout, I was not connected to my mind, body, and self. So yeah, spend time doing that to then be able to explore, where do I want my life to go? What is purposeful and meaningful to me, not just in my career, but in my life as well. So there was a lot of questioning, a lot of even my relationship, being married, lots of things that friendships, pretty much my whole life I was overhauling. So yeah, hopefully that gives some insight, just hearing my lived experience as well on this topic. So yeah, thank you. So, as we wrap up this episode, remember that whether you are experiencing burnout, a midlife crisis, or both, these experiences are not only common, but also important turning points in life. Burnout is your body, soul, and mind's way of saying you need rest, you need replenishment, you need to connect back to self and your needs. And a midlife crisis invites you to reflect on what truly matters and where you want to go from here in your next chapter. Do take things one step at a time. Address that burnout exhaustion first, reclaim that energy. Then, when you have some energy, start exploring those bigger existential questions that come with that midlife turn point. You don't have to figure it out all at once, even if your body's urging you to do so. Surround yourself with that support, whether that's friends, professionals, or communities like the Thrive Beyond Burnout membership, and know that this is a chapter in life, an opportunity for growth. And thank you so much for joining me. If this episode resonates with you, I encourage you to subscribe, share with someone who might need it, and take care of yourself as you continue your journey. And until next time, stay well and be kind to yourself. Me again. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of When Burnout Becomes Reality podcast. I do hope that you have gained some insight, wisdom, or taking away something from this episode that is helpful for you with wherever you're at in your burnout journey or helping others with. Please also reach out. I'd love to hear from the listeners, the viewers, to find out what you're finding helpful, maybe what you still would like to know. So please don't hesitate to follow, subscribe, comment, review, like, shoot me an email. I have my details in the show notes. And if you are in need of services around burnout and you are an Australian citizen, I, in my business, Burnout Psychology Support, do offer group and individual services, telehealth, as well as in-person in Brisbane. So again, check out the show notes. I have my contact details, but the best thing to do is jump on my website at www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com. And just a reminder, of course, to reach out for personalized help. This podcast, whilst we strive to deliver information that can be supportive and educational for you, it is not tailored to meet your personal needs, and burnout is very individualized in terms of what gets us into burnout and what helps support us in getting out. So please do seek professional support. And I think that is it for me to share with you. Thank you once again, and take care of you. Bye for now. Thank you.